For 8 seconds, the air in the Combined Forces Command Bunker in Seoul felt not just heavy, but final. 8 seconds is enough time for a human heart to beat 10 times. It is also enough for a hypersonic missile to travel 40 miles. In August, those 8 seconds separated a regular Tuesday morning from the start of a nuclear exchange that could have changed the entire course of the 21st century. To make sense of what happened, here is a brief outline of the key events and decisions. 1. A technical mistake during a US-South Korea war game sent a false alert of imminent attack, which was received by North Korea as authentic. 2. North Korea responded by shifting nuclear launch authority to field commanders and moving its leadership and missile forces into position. 3. For 4 hours, the Korean peninsula hovered at the edge of catastrophe as real-world signals of war escalated alongside the ongoing exercise. 4. Multiple warning signs were missed amid the simulation's data overload until, at a critical moment, a senior Allied officer recognized the overlap between drill and reality. 5. The choice to halt the exercise came with just seconds to spare, narrowly preventing escalation. For over 4 hours, the world's most dangerous border was under a dead hand protocol. The authority to launch nuclear weapons had moved from the central government to field commanders who believed the worst had already happened. The United States and South Korea were in the middle of a large-scale war game. They were unaware that the adversary they were simulating had already moved its leader to a mountain bunker and was ready to act on a live go code. This story isn't just about a close call. It's also about the day the safety systems failed. In the end, it wasn't technology or treaties that saved us, but one person who had the courage to wait in silence for the truth. To grasp those 8 seconds, it helps to know about the Ulchi Freedom Shield. Every August, the Korean Peninsula hosts the world's largest joint military exercise. It involves tens of thousands of troops, carrier groups, and hundreds of flights. For soldiers, it's a tough logistics test. For analysts, it's a complex command post exercise. But North Korea sees it differently. They do not view it as a drill, but as a possible cover for a real attack. For years, the Kim regime has believed the United States might use one of these exercises to launch a real strike. They think one day the simulated bombers and messages will be real. In August, North Korea's fears collided with a technical problem that should never have happened. At 6:17 a.m., a junior technician was updating the Global Command and Control System, which connects different military branches. During an edit to an access control table, a routing error was introduced into the 11 lines of code. A simulated flash alert was assigned the wrong transmission protocol tag. Instead of being flagged as exercise only and kept within the contained simulation network, the message was designated as operational traffic. Because of an incomplete code check and an authentication handling failure, the system failed to detect the mismatch. In civilian life, such an error might just mean a failed email. In military intelligence, it can be much more serious. This error didn't crash the system. Instead, it dispatched a high-priority training message, a simulated flash alert about an imminent strike onto a real-world coordination channel visible to international intelligence partners and adversaries alike. This channel wasn't just for internal use. It was a gray channel used for international intelligence coordination. Signals intelligence stations across the Pacific monitored it. When the message was sent, it lost its exercise-only label. To anyone watching, it looked like a real, authenticated alert that the United States was preparing for an attack. At 6:17 a.m., North Korean intelligence stations at Goksan and Muncheon were not only listening, they were also recording NG. Inside North Korean command bunkers, the response came immediately. For 50 years they had been ready for this moment, known as 0 hour. They intercepted 11 lines of text that appeared to confirm an American attack. By 6:44 a.m., the North Korean military increased its radio traffic and entered a state called total signal emergence, in which all units simultaneously receive high-level encrypted orders. At US command, analysts noticed the spike and recorded it, but since they were in the middle of a large exercise, they assumed North Korea was just participating in the drill. They thought, good, the simulation is working. They were mistaken. At 6:51 a.m., satellite images displayed a high-security motorcade leaving the Ryongsan compound in Pyongyang. This was not a routine trip. The convoy had 18 vehicles, including armored transports and mobile jamming units. They were heading quickly toward the Kanggye region, where North Korea's most secure underground command centers are located. This was a contingency alpha move. It meant the supreme leader was leaving the capital because he believed an attack was already underway. As Kim was moved to safety, his military activated a doctrine called pre-delegation. Western analysts had only speculated about it before. Normally, North Korea is a one-man rule system, with Kim Jong-un as the sole authority to launch nuclear weapons. This setup is meant to keep control centralized. But pre-delegation is the worst-case scenario. If central command is destroyed or believes it is about to be, the power to launch tactical nuclear weapons passes to field generals. Control shifts from one leader to several, each able to act independently and believing their country has already been attacked. By 7:30 a.m., the dead hand protocol was active. North Korea's mobile missile launchers, or TELs, were leaving their hangars and moving to hidden positions in the mountains. They began fueling their rockets. This step cannot be reversed and usually means they plan to launch soon. Meanwhile, American analysts were starting their day, focused on simulated targets. They were unaware that North Korea was preparing to target real ones. The main issue was cognitive saturation. During large exercises like Ulchi Freedom Shield, analysts process huge amounts of data. There are thousands of simulated events and hundreds of real reports. The real North Korean mobilization was lost amid the simulation's noise. The team monitoring satellite images of the convoy did not communicate with the team tracking radio spikes. The information was in two separate queues, managed in different buildings. The buildings were close physically, but poorly connected in terms of communication. To stop similar failures, it is critical to establish dedicated communication protocols between intelligence teams during major exercises. Cross-team briefings, real-time information sharing platforms, and prioritized alert channels can help integrate key observations as they occur. For example, setting up a joint operations cell to bring together satellite, signals, and human intelligence specialists during high-tempo drills would enable faster recognition of unusual patterns. Additionally, adapting data triage processes so that real-world anomalies are automatically flagged above simulated events could prevent warning signs from being buried. These improvements can help teams avoid tunnel vision during high-stress operations and ensure critical signals are not missed. At 8:03 a.m., the first sign of trouble appeared. A junior specialist at a signals collection site in Japan noticed a unique communication pattern. It was not a voice or text, but a rhythmic, low-pitched pulse on a North Korean military frequency. This frequency had been quiet for 10 years. The specialist recognized it as the Operational Persistence Beacon, which signals a pre-delegated command structure. This was a sign that the dead hand protocol was active, VE. The specialist marked it. He marked it as anomalous, high priority. But the report, the specialist, flagged the signal as anomalous, high priority. However, the report did not go directly to a general. Instead, it entered a review queue, which was crowded with hundreds of other high priority flags from the simulation. The real warning was lost among many false ones and sat unnoticed for 23 minutes. During this time, North Korean field commanders waited for what they believed was the strike window. They sensed a pulse signature and felt a cold knot form in their stomach. She knew what it was. She immediately looked for corroboration. She checked the satellite logs. She saw the 6:51 a.m. convoy report for the first time. She realized that Kim had fled Pyongyang 90 minutes ago. She looked at the radio traffic spikes. She realized the North Koreans hadn't just been playing along. They were in a state of terminal readiness. Still, she hesitated. The risk of making a mistake was enormous. Declaring a real-world crisis during the largest joint exercise would force the US to pull back its carriers, ground its planes, and admit to a major security problem. She would be responsible for disrupting the year's most important exercise. In the military, caution is usually valued, but in a nuclear crisis, it can be dangerous. She spent the next 40 minutes searching for a logical explanation for the data, hoping to find a reason to believe it was not a real emergency. While she tried to stay calm, the exercise entered its most intense phase, Phase 3. At 9:15 a.m., the simulation began launching strike packages. Hundreds of US and South Korean jets digitally attacked North Korean air defenses. For North Korean radar operators already on high alert, the digital activity looked just like a real attack. Their screens are filled with targets. The earlier pre-strike notification from 6:17 a.m. now seemed to be confirmed by what they saw. This was the most dangerous moment. The dead hand protocols were meant to activate at times like this. North Korean local commanders had the authority, the targets, and believed their country was under attack. The only thing missing was confirmation of an explosion. They were waiting for the first sign of impact. At 9:31 a.m., the senior analyst finally acted. She did not have all the answers, but she saw enough to realize that the simulation and reality had become confused. She escalated the report to the Senior Intelligence Duty Officer SIDO at Combined Forces Command. The SIDO, a veteran of 3 tours in Korea, reviewed the dead hand pulse, the empty residence in Pyongyang, and the radar screens filled with exercise activity. He picked up the secure line to the watch officer at the Combat Operations Center. This is the room where the exercise is managed. This is where the war is choreographed. Is this exercise traffic? The watch officer asked. He saw the same radar spikes and radio surges. To him, the simulation looked like it was running perfectly. The SIDO paused before answering. For a second, there was only static on the secure line as both men realized the seriousness of the situation. In that time, the SIDO had to choose whether to trust the software system that said everything is a drill or his own instincts, which told him it was real. If he said yes, the exercise would go on and North Korea might launch missiles within minutes. If he said no, he would end the exercise and admit that the United States had lost control of the situation. I don't think so, the SIDO finally said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. I think they think it's real. Pull the exercise, the watch officer replied. With 3 words, the simulation was murdered. The war stopped. The digital strike packages vanished from the screens. The radio channels used for the exercise went silent. But the real crisis was, with those 3 words, the simulation ended. The war stopped, digital strike packages disappeared from screens, and the radio channels used for the exercise went silent. However, the real crisis was just starting. The US now had to find a way to explain to a nuclear-armed adversary that the apparent invasion was a mistake without making it seem like a trick before a real attack. Don't call Pyongyang, they didn't even have a working hotline at the time. Instead, they used a series of de-escalation signals. They ordered every US and South Korean aircraft to turn their transponders to peacetime codes and fly directly away from the DMZ. They moved the carrier strike groups out of their launch boxes. They made the military equivalent of putting their hands up. It took North Korea 90 minutes to respond. During that time, the dead hand signal continued. Analysts watched their screens, waiting to see if a missile would be launched, which would mean de-escalation had failed. At 11:42 a.m., the signal stopped. Radio traffic shifted from combat orders to administrative review. By 2:14 p.m., the convoy was seen leaving the Kanggye bunker and returning to Pyongyang. The dead hand protocol was no longer active. The investigation that followed was thorough and conducted within the organization. They found the 11 lines of code and the routing error, and they fixed the system. As an immediate safeguard, the command updated the global command and control system to prevent any training or simulated messages from crossing into actual world communication channels. Additional authentication checks were added, requiring alerts to be verified across multiple layers before transmission. Furthermore, regular joint simulations now include live drills for information triage, and new procedures ensure real-world anomaly reports receive automatic manual review regardless of simulation status. Analysts were retrained on these protocols, and briefings now stress the need for instant cross-team verification whenever technical issues arise. However, the underlying doctrine could not be changed. It is now clear that North Korea has a working pre-delegation system, that their dead hand protocol functions, and that it can be triggered more easily than previously thought. The real concern is not the technical fault itself. Glitches and code failures are common. What is troubling is that our advanced information systems made the crisis worse. The technology meant to provide superior situational awareness instead created cognitive blindness, allowing a nuclear-armed adversary to prepare for war for 4 hours without detection. The focus on the simulation caused us to overlook real-world events. The key lesson from this incident is not about the code, but regarding the human element. In today's world of algorithmic warfare, we regularly rely on computers to tell us what is real and what is a drill. However, machines lack intuition and cannot appreciate the importance of 8 seconds of silence. In the end, it was not technology that saved us, but a junior specialist who noticed a pattern and a senior officer who had the courage to question what he saw. To strengthen future crisis detection, analysts ought to follow a set of best practices that reinforce this human element. First, whenever an anomaly is detected, cross-check it with multiple sources or intelligence disciplines, even if it seems to fit the prevailing scenario. Build an environment where team members are encouraged to ask difficult questions and dispute assumptions, especially over complex operations. Prioritize reporting procedures so that real-world anomalies are always flagged for immediate manual review, regardless of concurrent simulation. Regularly conduct team briefings that bring together experts from different fields, affording a fuller perspective on unexpected developments. Most importantly, cultivate the habit of pausing to re-examine when something feels out of place, trusting both training and intuition. These steps help ensure that, no matter how advanced the systems become, alert and questioning analysts stay the last line of defense. The Korean Peninsula is unique in that a simple user error can directly lead to a nuclear crisis. There are no hotlines or shared crisis protocols. The system relies on signals, intelligence, and the hope that, if another routing error occurs, the person on duty will ask the right question. In nuclear brinkmanship, there is no second chance to fix mistakes. There are only a few seconds to decide whether to prevent a disaster or let it happen. As we look toward the next exercise cycle, the question isn't whether another glitch will occur. It is a mathematical certainty that, anticipating the next exercise cycle, the question is not if another glitch will happen, but when. It is certain that it will. The real issue is whether we have learned from August. As our systems become more complex, we depend even more on the intuition of the people who run them. Pay attention to the indicators and the dead hand, because the risk remains as long as the systems might fail.